I'm Mrs. Watts, and I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we're beginning an incredible adventure through White Fang by Jack London. This isn't just a read aloud series. Together, we're going to learn how great readers think while they read. Some supplies that you're going to need are some Post-it notes. You'll need a pencil. You will need a white sheet of paper. And, of course, White Fang by Jack London, and some color pencils so you can color your picture from today. Why read a classic? You might be wondering, why are we reading a book that was written over 100 years ago? One reason is that classic books stretch our brains. They introduce us to rich vocabulary, beautiful descriptions, and powerful storytelling that help us become stronger readers. Some of the words and sentences may be more challenging than books written today, but that's a good thing. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow. As we read, I'll help you understand the vocabulary, picture the setting, and think deeply about what the author is trying to tell us. What this series is about, in every video, we'll practice one of the thinking strategies that strong readers use. We'll learn to visualize, make predictions, ask questions, make connections, infer, discover new vocabulary, notice the author's craft, and much more. By the end of our journey through White Fang, you'll have a toolbox of reading strategies that you can use with any book you read. All right, today's strategy is visualization. And you may think, this is a baby strategy. Why am I going to visualize if you know what this might mean? Visualization never goes away. Even as an adult, as we read, we're always picturing things in our mind. So, visualization means creating a movie in your mind while you read. Great readers don't just see words on a page. They imagine the sights, sounds, smells, and feelings the author describes. Have you ever read a book and you start to feel either sad or mad, or maybe you start to hear the sounds that your book is talking about? Or maybe you start smelling something that your book is describing. These are all sensory details that help us visualize and connect with the text. As I read today, I'll stop from time to time and show you the picture that the author's words created in my mind. Remember, what you picture might look like something different than mine, and that's okay. Good readers use the clues from the text to build their own mental images. Now, even though our mental images might be a little bit different, they're still going to be similar. All right, let's go ahead and get reading. I want you to go ahead and grab your White Fang book. We're going to go ahead and open up to chapter 1. Okay. As I read, what I want you to do is I want you to picture the text that I'm reading in your mind like you would a movie. Remember, whenever a movie starts, it always starts with the setting. They're setting the stage of where it takes place. And that's something to keep in mind as we begin this text. All right, chapter 1, The Trail of the Meat. Dark spruce forest frowned on either side of the frozen waterway. The trees had been stripped by a recent wind of their white covering of frost, and they seemed to lean toward each other, black and ominous in the fading light. A vast silence reigned over the land. The land itself was a desolation, lifeless, without movement, so lone and cold that the spirit of it was not even that of sadness. What are you feeling right now? What are you seeing? I know for me in my mind, I'm seeing this barren land, and I'm assuming that it's during wintertime because if I look at the context clues in the text, it says the trees had been stripped by a recent wind of their white covering of frost. Frost only comes in wintertime or when it's cold. So this tells me it's cold. And when it talks about the fading light, it might be towards dusk or evening time. It's getting dark. A vast silence reigned over the land. It's quiet. There's not a lot of noise. And when it says the land itself was a desolation, lifeless without movement. I can infer from these words that there's nothing there. It's lifeless. There's no animals, nothing's moving, it's quiet, it's cold, it's getting ready to get dark. There was a hint in it of laughter, but of laughter more terrible than any sadness. A laughter that was merciless as the smile of a sphinx. A laughter cold as the frost and partaking of the grimness of infallibility. Let's unpack that for a minute. There's a lot of words in here that we may not know in today's time. So when it says grimness of infallibility, I may not know what those words are, but I can read them in context and try to figure out what they might mean. So when it says there was a hint in it of laughter, but of a laughter more terrible than any sadness, that tells me that this is worse than sadness. Whatever is going on here, it's not good. And the smile of a sphinx, that's obvious. If you don't know what a sphinx is, I can use this text and read this word within context that to tell me that this is something that smiles. Is it an animal? Is it a person? And then a laughter cold as the frost. So frost is cold. So the wilderness is laughing and it's cold. So this isn't good. This is setting a scene that just is cold, lonely, getting ready to get dark. You know, what are you feeling? For me, I'm feeling something's not right. Something bad might happen. Let's keep reading. It was the masterful and communicable wisdom of eternity laughing at the futility of life and the effort of life. Once again, there's a lot of big vocabulary words that you may not understand, and that's okay. If I try to read them in context, I can try to figure out that this isn't good. Like the effort of life. Something is not good. It was the wild, the savage, frozen-hearted Northland wild. But there was life abroad in the land and defiant. Defiant is, it doesn't follow the rules. So the land is not following the rules. Down the frozen waterway toiled a string of wolfish dogs. So if I'm picturing this in my mind, I am picturing a cold, desolate land. We've now got a waterway. We've got wolfish dogs. So now I'm actually going to take out my paper and I'm going to try to draw what I'm seeing in my mind to help me better understand what I'm reading, especially since there's a lot of big words in here that I may not know or understand. Go ahead and grab your pencil. And what I want you to do is I want you to do your best to sketch what's in your mind, what you're seeing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can draw stick figures. I am not good at drawing dogs, so my dogs may not look very good. I want you to take a few minutes and draw what you see in your mind. Let's do that now. Okay, I've drawn what I'm seeing in my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and show you my picture, and just remember, I cannot draw dogs. Okay, so what I have so far is I have this. I have my desolate land. I have my trees. It's cold. I have my wolfish dogs down here. I have the waterway. When I think of a waterway, I think of like a stream or a creek or something like that. So as I continue to read, I'm going to keep adding to my picture. This picture should be what you're seeing in your mind. Okay, let's go ahead and keep reading. Their bristly fur was rimmed with frost. Their breath froze in the air as it left their mouths, spouting forth in spumes of vapor that settled upon the hair of their bodies and formed into crystals of frost. Leather harnesses was on the dogs, and leather traces attached to them to a sled which dragged along behind. The sled was without runners. It was made of stout birch bark, and its full surface rested on the snow. The front end of the sled was turned up. like a scroll in order to force down and under the bore of soft snow that surged like a wave before it. On the sled, securely lashed, was a long and narrow, oblong box. There were other things on the sled, blankets, an axe, and a coffee pot, and a frying pan. But prominent, occupying most of the space, was the long and narrow, oblong box. All right, I want you to go ahead and think about what you're seeing in your mind. And I want you to do your best to draw what I just read on your illustration here. So it talked about a sled that doesn't have any men on it. So if you use your background knowledge, and if you know anything about dog sledding, you know that dogs pull sleds, and normally a man stands on the back of the sled. But the text is telling us that it's manless. It doesn't have a man there. And on the sled is an oblong box. So an oblong box is like a rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and do my best, and I'm going to draw a sled with the dogs attached to, or pulling the sled. Okay, here's my illustration. I have a sled here. I have an oblong box on my sled, and then the dogs are pulling the sled. Okay, so that's the picture I'm seeing in my mind. I don't have a man there because it says that there is not a man on the sled. It's manless. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep reading. And as I read and find out more information, I'm going to add more to my illustration. And remember, I'm only adding the things that I'm visualizing in my mind. Remember, you're thinking about the text, or you're visualizing the text like a movie as you read. Okay. In advance of the dogs, on wide snow shoes, toiled a man. At the rear of the sled toiled a second man. If I unpack those, advance, so there's a man in advance of the dogs. There's a man ahead of the dogs on snowshoes. And then when it says at the rear of the sled, that's the back of the sled. So there's a third man. Interesting. But the text is only describing two men. I'm going to keep reading to see what happens. On the sled in the box lay a third man whose toil was over, a man whom the wild had conquered and beaten down until he would never move nor struggle again. It is not the way of the wild to like movement. Life is an offense to it, for life is movement. And the wild aims always to destroy movement. It freezes the water to prevent it running to the sea. It drives the sap out of the trees till they are frozen to their mighty hearts. And most ferociously and terribly of all does the wild harry and crush into submission man who is the most restless of life, ever in revolt against the dictum that all movement must, in the end, come to the cessation of movement. There's a lot to unpack there. We have a lot of vocabulary words that we may not know in today's time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw what I'm visualizing in my mind first. So I've got a man in advance of the dogs, a man at the rear, so the back of the sled, and then there's a third man in the oblong box on the sled. I'm going to go ahead and draw that because that's what I'm seeing in my mind. And your drawing doesn't have to be perfect. I can't draw people, so I'm drawing stick figures. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you my illustration. I have a man at the rear, my little stick figure, and then I have a man in advance of the dogs. I drew snowshoes on him right there, and then I have the third man that's in the oblong box. Okay, now the text does go on to talk about how the wild is always trying to destroy movement. So we could spend a lot of time unpacking this in the vocabulary here, but the purpose of this video is to practice visualization. So we'll have to come back to that at another time in a different video. All right, Let's keep reading. But at the front and rear, unawed and undomitable, toiled the two men who were not yet dead. So these two men are not dead. Their bodies were covered with fur and soft tan leather. Eyelashes and cheeks and lips were so coated with the crystals from their frozen breath that their faces were not discernible. This gave them the seemingly of ghostly masks, undertakers in a spectacle world at the funeral of some ghost. But under it all, they were men, penetrating the land of desolation and mockery and silence, puny adventurers, bent on colossal adventure, pitting themselves against the might of a world as remote and alien and pulseless as the abyss of space. All right, so what are you picturing in your mind as I read through that? For me, I'm picturing men that are covered in animal fur that's thick to help keep them warm. They have frost on their eyelashes and their face, and the frost is so thick that you can't make out their facial features. They're determined to conquer this wilderness. So that's what I'm seeing in my mind. And they're cold. That's another feeling that I'm feeling. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna draw some fur. I'm gonna do my best. Okay, here's my illustration. I've drawn fur on my men now. All right, so this is setting the scene of White Fang. I'm gonna keep reading and continue to add details as I read. They traveled on without speech, saving their breath for the work of their bodies. On every side was the silence, pressing upon them with a tangible presence. It affected their minds as the many atmospheres of deep water affect the body of the diver. It crushed them with the weight of unending vastness, an unalterable degree. It crushed them into the remotest recesses of their own minds, pressing out of them like juices from the grape. All the false ardors and exaltations and undue self-values of the human soul until they perceive themselves finite and small, specks and motes, moving with weak cunning and little wisdom amidst the play and interplay of the great blind elements and forces. There's a lot to unpack in this paragraph as well. But for this video, our purpose is visualization. So as I read through this, I'm visualizing in my mind men that are refusing to give up. They're cold, they're tired, they're weary, but they're gonna keep going. They're silent, they're not speaking. What tells me that is the text is talking about how they traveled on without speech. So I am seeing these men silent in my mind, determined to get through this rough and rugged wilderness. So next what I'm gonna do is if you're in a stopping place, which I'm stopping with where we're at now, you can go ahead and color your illustration that you made. So I have some color pencils here, and I'm gonna take some time, and you can do this too, to go through and color my illustration. Now, if you're a teacher watching this video, what I like to do with my students in my classroom is I give them some draw time to add more details to their illustration after I'm done reading. They can go through and color it to help them visualize more of what they see in their mind. Then when they're all finished, what I like to do is a gallery walk. And I have students leave their illustrations on their desk, and then they walk around the room and they look at their other classmates' illustrations to see what they visualized in their mind as they read. So that way they can see that their illustrations are similar, but they still could be different because we all picture different things in our mind, but they're still all close to what we're reading. So then I also give students a Post-it note, and they can write warm and cool feedback to their classmates on their Post-it notes. And I teach you how to write warm and cool feedback. So as we close out this video, now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you a little teaser. Today we practiced visualization, and we started building our thinking poster. So this is our thinking poster that we are actually going to use throughout this series. We're gonna add things to this poster that we have practiced as we read. So today we practice visualization. When I finish my illustration, I'm going to add this to our thinking poster. So when we're all finished, we can see all the different reading strategies or thinking strategies that we used to help us better understand the text as we read through White Fang. Now, to close this out, we're going to do another reading strategy, and it's called making a prediction. Now, I'll do a video later on that goes into more depth with making a prediction. Making a prediction is when we make a guess of what's going to happen next in the story. I don't know how many of you have ever sat and watched a movie with a friend and you're like, oh my goodness, I think this is going to happen next. So my family and I, we do that all the time, and we try to see who ends up being right with their guess. The same thing is true when we read a text. So I want you to think about a prediction that you could make after what you read today. And remember, when you make a prediction, you want to pull stuff from the text that supports that prediction. It can't be some random off-the-wall prediction where you say, oh, I predict they're going to go to the beach. Obviously, the setting of this story does not take place at the ocean or the beach. So I'm going to use what I read today to help me make a prediction. Go ahead and grab your Post-its. I'm going to go ahead and grab these Post-its, and I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to start with using a sentence starter. I predict whatever you want to predict. So go ahead and take a few minutes, write a prediction. And if you want, you can share your prediction with me by either leaving a comment, or you can email me at miss.rebekah.watts@gmail.com. I'm going to write my prediction, and then I will add it to our thinking poster. So you'll see that next time. All right. Before we finish, I want you to think about one question. What do you think is going to happen next? How can you use visualization to help you better understand a complicated text like White Fang? Don't worry about being right or wrong. Don't worry about your illustration being a work of art. This is all about helping you understand what you're reading. In our next lesson, we'll continue reading White Fang, and I'll introduce another powerful reading strategy and go into more depth on making predictions. We'll see if our predictions were correct from today, and we'll learn how good readers change their thinking as they discover new information. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on our next adventure with White Fang.